Naomi Harris was one of the city's most prestigious police captains. As both a woman and a black officer, she had to prove herself every day. Her achievements were remarkable, but they were not just about her skills. They were also about fighting against the place society had assigned her. Because to many, the position Naomi had risen to was one she shouldn't have. Being both a woman and black meant facing even more challenges every single day. For most men in the police force, Naomi's success was a threat. There was one man she knew all too well, a man who constantly belittled her, Ryan Turner. Ryan wasn't just a police officer, he was also one of the department's most prominent symbols of racism and sexism. He had always dismissed Naomi's rise to the top, scoffing at every opportunity, saying, "What is a woman doing here?" In his eyes, Naomi was just a local woman. He couldn't accept that a black woman could carry such power. One day, Naomi's team was assigned to capture a major criminal threatening the city. Marcus Harris, the leader of one of the city's biggest gangs, was at the center of a massive chase after a string of robberies. Naomi, along with her team, moved into action. Ryan was also on the mission, and once again, he was waiting for every opportunity to humiliate Naomi. He constantly questioned her decisions and tried to undermine her leadership. On the day of the raid, Naomi was successfully leading the operation, but Ryan still refused to respect her. His eyes always carried the look of a threat, as if he was waiting to see her fail. Naomi gave clear orders to her team, but Ryan kept disregarding her, misdirecting others. "These kinds of operations aren't for people like you," he said to Naomi. "Women need to know their place." But Naomi never lost her composure. Standing her ground, she turned to Ryan and said, "If you have a problem, I can have you removed from this mission." Yet the disdain in Ryan's eyes never faded. Eventually, they completed the operation successfully. Marcus was captured. But for Naomi, this victory meant more than just an arrest. It was another moment where Ryan's deep-seated hatred toward her and the entire team had surfaced once again. After the mission, Ryan seized an opportunity to humiliate Naomi in front of the team. "No one would ever think a woman could lead a raid like that," he said, his voice dripping with mockery and contempt. "Being this strong, making decisions like a man, it's too much for someone like you." Naomi felt a surge of anger throughout her body. A line had been crossed. She couldn't tolerate it any longer. Ryan began to push Naomi, trying to overpower her physically. Naomi resisted before she could fall to the ground, but Ryan continued to insult her, refusing to take her seriously. Yet Naomi remained composed. She looked him in the eye one last time and calmly said, "You're going to pay for this, Ryan, but let me tell you something. This time, you're not alone." Moments later, Naomi was arrested due to Ryan's attack. The entire city was talking about how Naomi had been humiliated and how a racist police officer had assaulted her. Naomi wasn't just a police officer. She was a woman defending her identity in a society that constantly challenged her. But her arrest wasn't just an attack on one woman. It became a symbol of oppression against all women, black people, and victims of discrimination. The city was shaken. Women's rights activists, advocacy groups, and social justice organizations stood by Naomi. A massive wave of protests erupted. People weren't just fighting for Naomi, they were standing up against racism and sexism. A week later, Naomi's innocence was proven and Ryan was fired. Naomi turned this entire experience into a symbol of resistance as she returned to the police force. But this time, it wasn't just her victory, it was a victory for all women. Naomi's fight had become an inspiration, proving that demanding justice was not just her right, but the right of all women, all black people, and anyone fighting for fairness. Women's rights organizations in the city awarded Naomi. Every woman's strength and resilience will only grow stronger. Just like Naomi has shown us, they said. She was no longer just a police captain. She had become a symbol of freedom for all women. Naomi's battle against racism and sexism strengthened the belief of women across the city and the country in their own fight. Naomi Harris had faced hardships her entire life. Since childhood, she had felt that her existence was always questioned. Being a black woman meant being constantly underestimated by societal norms and systems. A woman's strength was often seen as a threat, an anomaly. But Naomi had turned every challenge, every pain, every ounce of anger into fuel for her goals. She had matured over the years, proving herself in every possible way while dedicating herself to protecting the city. But her success had not only earned her respect, it had also gained her more enemies. One morning, she received intelligence that a new criminal organization was on the move, threatening the city. Its leader, Marcus Harris, was the most dangerous criminal in town, a feared figure in the underworld. Naomi took on the case. But this time, she was facing a threat unlike anything she had encountered before. In the police force, no matter how many successes Naomi achieved, one thing always loomed over her. She was a woman, and a black woman at that. Every day she felt increasingly isolated and excluded. Ryan Turner, the racist and sexist officer who constantly watched Naomi's every move and belittled her achievements, never saw her as more than a woman who should be in her place. He had dismissed Naomi's success in capturing a gang leader, saying, "Women aren't suited for this kind of work." He was one of those who always undermined her accomplishments, attributing them to luck or help. This deepened the battle within Naomi even further. As a woman, especially a black woman, she had to endure the relentless pressure of her identity in a male-dominated world, facing setbacks at every turn. The day of the raid arrived. Naomi's team was ready to capture Marcus Harris. Naomi gathered her team and went over the final details one last time. The air was cold, and an eerie silence reflected the gravity of the operation. Naomi remained calm and determined, leading her team through every step. But Ryan continued to underestimate her, challenging her leadership at every moment, saying, "This isn't your place." "Women are only good for helping others in these situations," Ryan said, belittling not just Naomi, but the entire team. Naomi's heart was breaking. Instead of collapsing every time, instead of stepping back, she tried to resist by using the pain, strength, and anger within her. But within this operation, the wounds inside Naomi deepened even further. She always felt excluded. When she and her team moved to confront the gang, the strength within her also made her feel an immense void. At every street corner, in every building, with every step she took, being a woman and being black stood before her as an obstacle. At the end of the raid, when Marcus Harris was captured, Naomi's victory felt entirely different. The pain in her mind, the feeling of being an outcast in society, only grew as she succeeded. But at that moment, Ryan, more furious and condescending than ever before, took Naomi back to the station. He saw an opportunity. He thought he could use Naomi's success as a way to torment her even further. Slowly, angrily approaching Naomi, he said, "A woman should never be allowed to go this far in an operation." Ryan literally started pushing Naomi. He saw it as his duty to stand in her way, to block her resistance at every step. Naomi tried to defend herself against this physical and emotional assault, but Ryan made his racism and sexism even more apparent. "A black woman wielding this kind of power makes you a threat," he said. Naomi's body grew heavier with those words, her soul dimming. But a woman could only truly feel her strength when everything else was stripped away. "No," Naomi said, a lump in her throat. "No, people like you can't belittle my strength, and I will defeat you at every step." Ryan shoved Naomi, physically assaulted her, and dragged her to the station. But this wasn't just a moment of physical harm, it was the breaking point of Naomi's fight for survival. She had begun to realize that being a woman and being black wouldn't weaken her, it would only make her stronger. But everything had a price. Naomi was taken into custody. Throughout the city, the injustice done to her spread like wildfire. The streets erupted in protest. Women's rights activists and black communities united to make Naomi's voice heard. But this wasn't just about Naomi. It was a turning point for all women and all black people. As a police officer, Naomi had chosen to stand tall, not just against the pain of being a black woman, but against the oppression of an entire society. A week later, Naomi's innocence and Ryan's crimes came to light. Ryan was arrested, but Naomi's heart remained wounded, as it always had been. At that moment, it wasn't just Naomi's fight, it was the fight of all women and black people. It was the moment Naomi and all victims declared to the world that being just a woman and just black could never justify the injustices done against them. But in this battle, Naomi had lost everything. Victory wasn't a reward for her, it was another form of pain. Still, Naomi became a symbol of justice. The entire city commemorated her, holding ceremonies in her honor as a symbol of women's and black resistance. But at that ceremony, Naomi simply said, "I only sought justice," reminding everyone that she would never forget her strength and identity. Naomi returned to her position in the police force, but nothing was the same anymore. Her return brought not only the pride of victory, but also the pain of loss and loneliness. At that moment, only one thought occupied Naomi's mind. This world will never give you the value you deserve. You either take it with your own strength, or you lose everything. Years of struggling against racism, sexism, and patriarchal systems had deeply scarred Naomi's heart. But something had changed. She was no longer just a police officer. She had become the voice of every woman and every black person. Yet for her, this wasn't a form of salvation. It was a painful responsibility. Because Naomi had grown increasingly isolated with every step, carrying the weight of her strength alone. Women's rights advocates in the city continued to call her a hero. But Naomi never felt she deserved that word. Being a hero wasn't about achieving the success people expected. It was about fighting every single day just to stay standing. Every morning, as she got out of bed, Naomi wondered if her victory had truly been a win. Did I win? Did I really win? The question gnawed at her every night. One day, during a police department meeting, Naomi's pent-up anger reached its peak. Ryan was still seen as some kind of silent hero among the officers. His dismissal from the force was treated like a mere warning, and no one was truly held accountable. Naomi could no longer tolerate it. "As a police captain, my duty is to uphold justice," she said. Her voice trembled, but there was a power in her eyes, and tears streamed down her face. "But this system only serves justice to those who hold power, not for people like us. Not for women, not for black people. That's why we have to fight, just to stand on our feet." In that moment, Naomi's words echoed through the silence. She wasn't just speaking for herself. She was speaking for all the unheard victims. Women and black people had been pushed to the margins of the system for years. But Naomi was breaking those chains one by one by embracing her identity with pride. Yet with every step forward, the wounds inside her only deepened. A week later, on the morning Naomi was assigned to a new case, a large crowd had gathered in front of the station. Women's rights activists and supporters of justice had come to celebrate Naomi's courage. But deep within the city's social structure lurked an illness, Naomi's fear of failing once again. Every time she rose, she was met with greater threats. The activists sensed that with every step forward, Naomi was growing more alone. That day, however, brought an unexpected tragedy. While intervening in the case, Naomi suffered a brutal attack. A corrupt officer who was an ally of Ryan and had connections with the city's most powerful gang had set a trap for her. While tracking a suspect in a dangerous district, Naomi found herself caught in an ambush, and then everything went black. Naomi collapsed to the ground, struck by a severe blow to the head. Her entire body felt paralyzed for a moment. The sounds around her faded, her vision darkened. In that final moment, only one thought filled her mind. We are all just dreams, but at least I did the right thing. Sirens wailed across the city. As Naomi's eyes closed, She thought about the battles she had fought, the life she had sacrificed. It wasn't just her own life flashing before her eyes. It was the lives of all women and black people who had fought before her. Victory and heroism always had a cost, but Naomi had chosen to pay that price no matter what. Naomi's death sent shockwaves through the city. Women, black communities, and social justice activists gathered in her memory. Protests, marches, and memorials filled the streets. Naomi had shown the world how powerful a woman and a black person could be. Her name was no longer just that of a police captain. It had become the symbol of everyone who had ever been oppressed. At Naomi's funeral, thousands of women and men from the police force, civil rights groups, the time they spent together helped Naomi slowly unravel the loneliness and trauma that had been building up inside her for years. Zara never saw Naomi as weak or vulnerable. She had accepted Naomi's strength in its deepest form. But this relationship meant more to Naomi. A woman's worthiness of love was the beginning of everything for her. Every moment spent with Zara gave Naomi a new understanding of love. One night, Naomi and Zara joined a feminist march in the city. Throughout the march, Naomi's eyes were always on Zara. Zara shone like a star in the crowd, courage in her eyes, confidence in her face. By simply watching Zara, Naomi found peace within herself. The thoughts that appeared in her mind became more meaningful in the presence of Zara. Together, they were trying to overcome societal barriers while also healing each other's deepest emotional wounds. At the end of the march, the moments Naomi and Zara spent together had become more than just a symbol of resistance. In each other's eyes, there was a bond that united love and struggle. Zara was not only the most important person in Naomi's life, but she was also the one who accepted Naomi's identity and strength, loving and accepting her as she was. However, Naomi's life was always a complex and difficult journey. Even though her relationship with Zara comforted her and gave her strength, she felt that this relationship was still being rejected and judged by society. From the moment Zara entered Naomi's life, she had become the target of two opposing sides of society. Zara was known as an advocate for LGBT rights, while also standing by Naomi, sharing the struggle of being a woman and a black woman. After Naomi's death, Zara faced a huge void. Naomi's loss caused her to question not only the emptiness in her life, but also her own identity. That day, Zara thought about Naomi's last moments. After Naomi passed away, something had changed in the city. Naomi's body and the legacy she left behind were too strong to disappear. Zara's heart was broken, but there was something she carried in her heart: Naomi's struggle. Naomi had shown everyone the power of defending love, not only against the pressures of being a woman and black, but also for standing up for love. Zara made a vow to honor Naomi's memory. "I will continue the fight so that Naomi's struggle is remembered by this city and the world." Every year, Zara organized marches and gatherings in Naomi's memory. These events were not only to honor Naomi, but also to broadcast Naomi's commitment to feminist values and LGBT rights. Naomi's struggle had become a symbol not only of a woman's fight for survival, but also of loving in all identities and showing the power of that love. Zara, by remembering Naomi every day and fighting in her name, would never forget Naomi's worth to the world. And finally, the words Zara spoke at the ceremony honoring Naomi echoed through every corner of the city. Naomi Harris was not just a police captain, but a revolution for us. She was a woman who fought against the difficulties of being a woman and black, but also a woman who fought with love in her heart. Her struggle will always be greater for us. Today, we will continue Naomi's fight, celebrate her identity, and keep fighting every day to defend and love our own identity. Naomi, we will never forget you. The tears streaming down Zara's face deepened Naomi's memory. This was a true victory after Naomi's death. Because Naomi's name was not just the name of a police officer, but also the name of all women, all LGBT individuals, and those who embraced their identities. And while Zara continued to carry Naomi's legacy, she also carried her love in her heart. After Naomi's death, Zara became the leader of the women's rights movement in the city for a while. Naomi's ideals and struggle were resonating everywhere. Every corner of the city reminded people of Naomi's name and the importance of the fight she had waged. But the emptiness inside Zara seemed like it would never go away. With Naomi's loss, Zara began to feel the loneliness deeply. Every day she confronted Naomi's ghost, feeling her absence more with each step. She remembered every moment with Naomi, every smile, every touch, and tried to live with those memories in her heart. One evening, while Zara was preparing for an event she organized after Naomi's death, the sadness inside her began to rise again. Although she wanted to honor Naomi's memory and continue her fight, each passing day made the burden heavier on her shoulders. She still couldn't accept Naomi's loss. Every night she remembered the strength in Naomi's eyes and woke up with a void inside. But there was one thing. Zara was determined to continue Naomi's fight. She would not end this war on her behalf. But life had never offered an easy path. Zara knew that. One day, when a great conflict erupted between the city's police and women's rights activists, Zara immediately sprang into action to resolve the situation. She was the city's strongest advocate, but this time, something was different. This was the moment that Zara's greatest fear had come true. During a protest, when Zara faced off with the police, gunshots rang out. Multiple people were shot, and the crowd scattered with screams. Zara, bravely defending the women, was at the forefront. When something unexpected happened, a police officer, one of those very police officers, fired into the crowd to control it. The bullet struck Zara directly in the heart. In that moment, time seemed to stop. Her vision blurred, her heart raced, and everything slowly darkened. As she fell, Zara whispered Naomi's name, Naomi, the love of her life. Every moment spent with her, the fight to defend the city, the steps they had taken together came to her mind. "I'm doing this for you, Naomi. I won this war for you," she said one last time, losing her strength. Zara's body fell to the ground, but the love and struggle within her never died. She had sworn to keep Naomi's name alive, and by continuing Naomi's struggle, she had given her death meaning. As Zara closed her eyes to the world, her heart was filled with the power of Naomi's honorable struggle. They had lived more together. 2 women, 2 black women, 2 brave souls. They fought for each other, no matter what obstacles came their way. After Zara's death, the city experienced a void. Women's rights activists and the black community would remember Zara for carrying on Naomi's fight. She had kept Naomi's name and struggle alive. But now Zara was gone too, and her name, like that of another hero, would remain in the memory of the people. At her funeral, thousands of people gathered, just as they had at Naomi's. Women's rights activists, the LGBT community, the black community, and the people came together to honor Zara's memory. The ceremonies, emotional speeches, and marches symbolizing the strength of Naomi and Zara's lives. The city was shaken by the legacy left behind by 2 women, 2 black women. Zara and Naomi's struggles remained not just a memory, but a light for the future. At Zara's funeral, Naomi's mother, who had not spoken since the loss of her daughter, found solace in seeing Zara and understanding her life. After Zara's death, Naomi's mother said these words, "Zara, you were as brave as my daughter. You too won Naomi's fight." And in that moment, the legacy of Zara and Naomi had transformed from merely lost lives into a history filled with love, strength, and resistance. Zara's funeral was unlike anything the city had ever seen. Thousands gathered, their voices united in grief and fury. The streets were flooded with people carrying signs bearing her name alongside Naomi's, their love and struggle now immortalized. The air was thick with the weight of loss, but also with the unyielding fire of resistance. Naomi's mother, who had remained silent after her daughter's death, finally stepped forward. Her voice was hoarse, her face worn by sorrow, but her words cut through the silence like a blade. "Zara, you were more than just my daughter's love. You were her fight. And now you have become ours." A hush fell over the crowd. Eyes widened. The weight of her words settled in. And in that moment, it became clear. Naomi and Zara's fight wasn't over. If anything, it had only just begun. The city would remember. The world would remember. Because love, in its purest form, never dies. It becomes a revolution.